Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on.
Well, until today, the markets had been on a slow climb, some new records set. Is this trend going to continue, and what's behind it?
Yes, it will, and behind it is just lots of smoke and mirrors. I've been a perma-bear, and there are 100 good reasons to hate this market, but I also have charts that tell me that no matter what I think or whatever logic seems to suggest, that stocks are just headed higher. I've just put out a very bullish target in the S&P cash up around 3095. That equates to an approximately, I think 1,800 point rally in the Dow to around 28,000. So, as long as you're focused on the half a dozen stocks that all these genius money managers buy to make themselves look smart, if they're headed higher, so is the market. So I've got higher targets in a lot of stocks. If you're perma-bear and hope springs eternal, though, I will say that the very recent, like a day or two ago, failure of the E-mini S&Ps to reach a very clear target, and the downturn that we've had since is at least promising. So there is, I would say, maybe a 15 to 20% chance that the high that we saw a couple of days ago in the S&Ps will be the high of the bull market begun in 2009.
Besides the half dozen stocks supporting the market, what are the other ones doing?
The other ones are just kind of workaday portfolio stocks. Everything is going higher. You've heard the expression that a rising tide floats all boats. So there are plenty of boats getting floated. Maybe floated even above the water level. They're kind of on hydrofoils here, if they are in any way influenced by some of these, what I call lunatic stocks, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix. And the amazing thing is that so many of these lunatic stocks have rallied into what I would call bearish stories. In the case of Facebook, they are coming under such heavy regulatory scrutiny that they could easily become uncool and a pariah overnight. And Zuckerberg announced a change in his business model, and I see any change as being having a negative impact on earnings, because the way Facebook had been earning its money, which is basically to sell out each and every one of its customers 10 times to anybody who wants to buy all the information, you can't improve on that. So any changes that Zuckerberg makes will, I think, negatively impact the bottom line. Apple, even more crazily, the story, the developing negative story, is that buyers are not turning over their overpriced iPhones as quickly as they used to, and that this has created a weakening sales trend, not only here, but in China, which is their second largest market. So iPhone far and away is the big piece of Apple's revenues. But so the company, its great new idea was that they were going to shift more emphasis into streaming content, as though that's going to make them more money. You know, they'll go head to head then with Netflix. And number one, it's not like the margins in the entertainment business will even be close to what Apple has been making selling overpriced phones. And number two, they've got enormous competition, very obviously from Netflix, which has bid the price of talent up to the sky. They paid Chris Rock $40 million to do 2 1-hour specials. So, it's not a great business to get into, even if you're a huge player like Apple.
And you know something? I watched one of those Chris Rock specials. He wasn't funny. I didn't find him funny
Chris
at all.
Rock. I mean, I'm not sure he's worth $40 million for 2 hours of work, but I've never seen him not be funny. So I'll have to.
Well,
check
he
that
accomplished that at London's O2 Stadium. I don't know what he talked about. I just thought wasn't funny.
You know what it is when someone's paying you $40 million. Let's just say the incentive to have to be anything, including funny, is no longer there. I think he's kind of laughing all the way to the bank himself. No comedian could have imagined raking in that kind of haul for a couple of 1-hour specials. But again, the competition for content, for talent in the entertainment business is insane right now. And I think even Netflix has kind of overbid the goal of profitability. So and it winds up being a play really on subscriber base. So it doesn't matter whether they're producing too many shows for us to watch. And there's a lot more of these with HBO and Netflix and all the rest putting out TV series. You can't watch it all. So that no longer matters. It doesn't matter whether anybody's tuned in, whether they're attracting advertisers. In the IQ of 60 mentality of Wall Street, as long as they're showing subscriber growth, that's the important thing. And Netflix is somewhat mature in that area in the U.S., but they're still picking up subscribers abroad.
Also, going back to Facebook, they have been fined heavily in Europe for violating privacy laws. Canada's privacy commissioner says Facebook is also violating Canada's privacy laws. And Facebook says, so what? What are you going to do about it? And in Canada, for some reason, the government feels corporations are untouchable. You can't go after them.
Well, that's Canada for you, but you don't see Facebook getting in Belgium's face with that kind of sass. I mean, Facebook will bully Canada because it can get away with it, but I don't think they have any illusions about taking Zuckerberg's dog and pony show to Belgium and convincing the Europeans that Facebook isn't trampling privacy.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of PowerBand Solutions. PowerBand is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. PowerBand Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWPF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
Ackerman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Ackerman's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at ackermanresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, it seems to me it's really a merger and acquisition season in the marijuana business. Are you finding that? Billions are flying around.
It always is. I hold these request sessions for subscribers and Facebook subscribers, and we look at stocks that they like, and they're always zeroing in on these marijuana stocks. But I don't think we'll ever, in our lifetime, get to a time where it's not premature to be all over these stocks. So it's predictable that big players will dominate the business, and you've got a lot of smaller players now jockeying to be that big player, or let's say in a group of big players. But I have to say, other than the fact that no one ever went broke owning a pot store, I just don't get it. I mean, I don't see, and I guess everybody's smoking dope. I came from Boulder. and saw no outward change when they legalized recreational marijuana in Colorado. There were a couple of horrific traffic accidents. I wouldn't say it's a pattern, but there were an interesting number of accidents where someone smoking dope came up behind someone who was making a left turn, and they rear-ended that person at speeds of, let's say, 40 to 80 miles an hour. And that seems to be a real hazard of marijuana out there on the roads. But,
well, in D.C., the problem is that the provincial government has taken a real prohibitionist attitude towards it. 2 legal pot stores in Vancouver, a city of nearly 3 million people. And, we wonder how many millions are they leaving on the table and still putting in the hands of organized crime, because they shut down all the dispensaries, some 400 of them. And, the government keeps screaming, we want to do it right, so we're not going to rush it. What has happened is they obviously didn't do their homework beforehand, and they're making it up as they go along. They refuse to provide figures on how much money they've lost, and how long is it going to take before they have a decent rollout. So they could have gone to Washington State next door, where it's been legal, 7-8 years? Seen how they did it, or Colorado or California or any of them, and it looks like they obviously did not do that. So it's an incredibly incompetent government-run business, but then it's government-run. What do you expect?
Well, ultimately, the enforcement really reflects the mores and political attitudes of the state or entity where legalization has occurred. So here down in Florida is certainly more conservative politically than Colorado. And down here, the marijuana options are very limited. You need a medical card, and it takes forever. In fact, a company that you would pay $200 or $300 to expedite your application for a medical card, when they talk about expediting, they mean like we'll get it for you in a few months versus maybe forever. So, so I've experienced really a very tight regulation, but also very loosey-goosey has occurred in Colorado.
Mm-hmm. And doctors in British Columbia are still reluctant to write prescriptions for marijuana for pain relief or to help fight opioid addiction, which apparently it does, because they don't want their reputation smeared. And what if the next federal government in Canada goes and bans marijuana again? Then their name is on a list of doctors who were pro-pot.
Right, and it's just telling you how stupid medical science is. You know, they're so sold on their own way of talking with and dealing with illness. So at the anecdotal level, you, I, and pretty much everybody else on planet Earth knows that marijuana is the greatest miracle drug ever. It's even surpasses aspirin. We've all heard from our friends countless stories about, well, this person has stopped his epileptic seizures or really greatly reduced them, and this person was getting nausea from chemotherapy and radiation, and now with marijuana he's just fine. Marijuana at the level of the user is working in every instance practically where it's tried, and yet here's the medical profession saying, oh, we want to see more evidence, and they're of course working in cahoots with the FDA. Like the FDA knows what the hell is happening. So it's really, we all know, we see the stupidity of it, that there's so many great stories about marijuana's, the medical properties of it, and yet it's being resisted by the FDA and the medical profession. And then you could say the same thing about cancer treatment. You know, we've got a huge edifice in Texas, in Houston, the Texas Medical Center, with these giant hospitals, but the treatment ultimately comes down to what we're for certain going to regard as a barbaric medieval process of radiation and chemotherapy. And yet there's practitioners out there who simply say that the only cure for cancer lies in the body's immune system. And there's such logic to that, and yet the profession and all the regulators resist it with every fiber in them.
The World Health Organization sued the U.S. federal government to get reports on medical marijuana released, and so it took them years. One of the things they found 25, 30 years ago, UCLA found that smoking marijuana didn't cause lung cancer. It actually sloughed off pre-cancerous cells in the lungs. So it prevented lung cancer. You don't hear anything about that.
Yeah, and you hear very persuasive arguments that CBD oil and some of the psychoactive variants of THC, they absolutely inhibit the spreading of cancer. It changes your what would ordinarily be spreading cancer cells bind themselves to cannabinoid receptors. And the anecdotal evidence is so strong, and yet therapeutically, at least with the franchisors, it's going nowhere.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp, RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, oil, went through the winter, usually a period when the prices go down, going up. What do you see happening with crude right now?
Are these Russians fantastic or what? We've been reading about OPEC. OPEC has been a failure for 2 decades, and now Putin comes into the picture, and he probably talked to his new partners, and he said, look, you guys want to make these price increases stick. You want to curtail supply. To do that, just listen to me. Follow my program. So here we've had oil go up in the face of, for one, a incipient recession story out of China. China's economy is slowing down, and when that happens, you better believe that at the margin, it's putting a lot of downward pressure on crude oil prices. China's the biggest buyer at the margin of energy. So instead, crude has been rising. So I think it's testimony to Putin's amazing tactical ability. And as I look at it, I just shake my head in disbelief that the crude has done what it's done. It's a tremendous public relations victory for Putin and OPEC.
Is that why Putin was high-fiving the Saudi crown prince at the last G20 meeting or whatever, where it looked like President Trump was the last man out and nobody was talking to him, but Putin and the Saudi prince seem to be having a jolly good time.
They are, and Putin's not going to let anything disturb that relationship that he has. Like if the Saudi prince happens to have had that reporter murdered, it's something Putin is more easily able to overlook than Trump. And so Putin is really making hay wherever he lands. He seems to be causing trouble. Particularly in Venezuela. The Russians sent 100 or 200 troops down there, and with just a couple of plane loads of soldiers, they can do a lot of damage. In conjunction with the Cubans, they've kind of entrenched this guy Maduro, and everybody knows that people are sick of the guy. He's destroyed their economic lives and their lives, and yet Putin, He's really on the winning side of asymmetrical war. We say that Russia can no longer afford to make conventional war. It can just make trouble, but it's so good at it and in some cases, arguably economically beneficial certainly to oil producers. Well, he's still got tremendous sway in this world.
We've heard word that 2 U.S. carrier task forces have headed in the direction of Venezuela. Do you think the U.S. will end up in a shooting war in Venezuela?
I don't see how we can do that. I mean, it's obviously the U.S. is resisting as much as it can, just going into Venezuela and mopping up. But certainly we have, with a relatively small troop presence, we could work wonders down there. I'm not quite sure the carriers are going to do the trick, but the Venezuelan army is really probably at the point of defecting, and that's really where this thing's going to tip. I don't think that the Venezuelan army has it in it to fight the revolutionists, the what would you call them? The
resistance movement, or
any case. I'm not sure the carriers are going to quite do it. We may require shots to be fired before Venezuela changes hands, and apparently Maduro was just ready to flee the coup, and the Russians talked him into staying. So again, the Russian influence is not just pernicious, but it's successful.
With so many sanctions against Venezuela, does their oil supply mean much anymore to the world market?
Now, oil is fungible, and if it doesn't come from Venezuela, it'll come from somewhere else. And as much as Trump has invoked sanctions tightening in a way that Obama never could have, it's still not impacting either Venezuela or Iran in the way that we might have hoped.
Is it true that Texas right now, because of a lack of pipelines, is flaring off enough natural gas that they could power every home in Texas with it?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was in Houston over a critical time where the Houston Chronicle really covers the energy sector better than any paper in America, and they were writing on that there's a huge amount, even though there's all this fracking production, it's really hard to make money, and so many companies were being shaken out of the business, even though it's never been easier to develop fracked sources of energy. So yeah, they were paying. In some cases, they were paying companies that could come in there with tankers and essentially fill up on natural gas that would otherwise be burned at the wellhead, and there was a huge glut. I guess there still is. There just is not we don't have the infrastructure to get the fracking, the production of these fracking operations into the market.
Is it also true that President Trump signed a bill to fast-track pipelines to try to take advantage of all that excess gas?
I've lost track, really. I know that these pipeline deals have had their troubles, and as much sense as they make economically, it's too easy, really, for a relatively small group of environmentalists to resist it. And I don't mean this. I'm a little bit conflicted on that. I think that if you let the companies themselves do all the pumping and transporting that they would like to do, you're going to run into real environmental problems. So that's one of the few areas where I see a need for some regulation, at least. And I'm not. My mind isn't completely made up about this idea that we should basically be drilling everywhere where there are energy resources.
Rick, anything else we should be keeping our eyes on right now?
I did put out this is nothing new, but it's a bearish projection on gold. I've been using for quite a while a 1262 70 target on June COMEX gold, and I think we're going to get a nice pop from exactly that price. We've been within $5 of it today. we'll get a tradable rally from 1262 basis June COMEX, but I think when it starts back down again, we're going to go to 1244. 1244 basis, that June contract would be a back up the truck number as far as I'm concerned. And even though I'm not really, I just hate gold. It's, I've got a lot of subscribers who are, they're just, they follow it very closely and they're, let's say, eternally hopeful, but I don't see gold right now as being in a bull or bear market. It's just kind of hanging out, and the bears are having just as much trouble selling it down as bulls are buying it higher.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
It's always a pleasure, Jim. Thanks for inviting me on.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. If you have any questions for Rick or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.